welcome back to another podcast episode for Coatings Pro magazine. I'm Stephanie Chiswick, and I'm editor-in-chief of Coatings Pro. Today we have with us again Anton Rusing. He's director of IUPAT's International Finishing Trades Institute. Again, that is the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. We talked with him 2 weeks ago, and we're just continuing that conversation. So thanks again for joining us, Anton.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm thrilled to be here.
Why don't we just start by giving that brief kind of overall background of where you came from in the industry?
So I'm a coatings applicator by trade. I went through the apprenticeship program, and I started in '96. And I did it to pay for college. That was, it was kind of a means to an end. And I realized that I loved the trades. I loved being a painter. So I started taking every class that I could. Went through the inspector programs. I have multiple credentials. Went through, got my PCS. And what I really found was my best love, after first getting into the trades and going through all the training myself, was actually training other people. So I've trained thousands of people to date. Going through our various programs, working with both NACE and SSPC, and our organization kind of does the same thing. We've been training people for over 100 years. Started with registered apprenticeship back in 1934 when FDR first signed the executive order to start the registered apprenticeship programs. So we've been doing it for a long time, and it's something that I personally love, and something that our organization really gets a lot of value of, and helps raise the bar in the industry. So that's kind of my background and where our organization's at.
Awesome. Yeah. Could you also maybe, to me, it's also, I think, worth describing maybe the difference or the, not the difference, but like how the two different organizations work. So I know you're related to IUPAT, but you kind of, I think, work separately meaning the International Finishing Trades Institute. Can you explain that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the union focuses on representing workers in the workplace, and they do all the typical representational activity, working on contracts, making sure that work rules are enforced, making sure that contractors have the manpower that they need, doing all those types of things. What the FTI does is we just focus specifically on the training, the certifications, on that side of it. We are a separate organization, a separate legal entity, but the way that our funds are structured, and this is through the Registered Apprenticeship Act, the way our funds are structured is it's a joint venture between labor and management. So folks that are representatives of the union and folks that are representatives of our contractors actually comprise the board that governs what FTI focuses on, what direction we go in. So it's a joint labor management board, and that's one of the things that makes it unique, and one of the reasons why registered apprenticeship is such a good idea is because it's jointly managed. So you ensure that the union is getting what they need. You make sure that the contractors are getting what they need. We make sure that we stay on top of the latest trends in the industry because it's managed by a group that's working in the industry on a daily basis. So. We're very closely affiliated with the union because they, again, comprise our board along with contractors, but we are a separate organization.
Okay. It does sound like a very kind of holistic approach then to the industry, which I feel like might give you a kind of a good place or kind of a good viewpoint on some of the current challenges that the contractors are going through. Do you have any sort of insight as to the top pain points that a lot of these painting contractors are going through these days?
Sure. And what's, one thing I didn't mention, it's a little outside of FTI, but I also manage our labor management fund, which is a similar structure. It's labor and management, jointly ran organization. But we focus on the LMCI side and the LMP side, which is the name of the fund. We focus on specifically those issues and how to address them. So it goes beyond just the training, and it gets into the challenges that looks like we're going to be facing in the next 5, 10, 15 years. There's potentially economic recession, partially as a result of COVID, but it's just kind of trending that way. Projects are getting increasingly complex. And the more complex they get, there's this migration of risk from the general contractor to the subcontractors or the trade contractors, as well as the owners. That's a big issue for our contractors. These mega projects, I think we'll see more and more of those as the years go on. There's probably going to be some short-term infrastructure spending that'll be good for us because the infrastructure is kind of falling down around us.
Yeah.
So that'll present some opportunities. One of the big ones is the gap between the skilled and the unskilled workforce. More and more people are retiring every day. Those experienced, we call them journeymen, but those experienced journeymen are retiring, and they're not being replaced at a fast enough rate. And that's a big issue. And that's one of the things that we focus on with FTI specifically is, closing that gap by training and getting our workers certified. Bunch of technological challenges and changes that are coming. Things like predictive AI. That migration of risk from the GCs down to the trade contractors, and using predictive AI to figure out where some of those pinch points might be. There's going to be changes with robotics. It's going to be hard to replace a worker. It's going to be hard to replace the person on the job, but but there's going to be a lot of augmentation with robotics, I think.
Right.
Huge changes in the way that we train.
The robotics thing is obviously so interesting, I think, to a lot of people. And my understanding is it's not necessarily replacing someone, because you still have to have someone controlling it. It's not, years ago I was a contractor in the military, and they said, we need to stop calling them unmanned vehicles because there is someone at the other end of it, working the joystick or whatever. So it's an interesting kind of we got to pick our words so people understand what we're talking about. It's so funny.
Well, and that's part of the issue with the change is how do you train those people, because the folks that are doing the work right now, they're going to be the ones that are running the equipment, they're programming those robots or controlling those robots. It's going to require a different type of training, and that's one of the challenges is how do we make that jump from where we are today with the way that we do work, and how do we do the work of tomorrow? What's it going to look like, and how do we train for it and prepare for it?
Yeah, and it's also you guys, I stopped by the Hanover location. I want to say it was last year, 2019, when you were doing a training with a scissor lift robotics, and that was on the training side of getting people sort of used to, okay, before we put someone in the field on a scissor lift in a plant sort of situation where there's just all these external things going on, and let's train them first on the robot and at least get them up to, I don't know, 60% rather than starting them on the job site at 0. That was such an interesting experience. Is it kind of trending towards that as well as, it's not just robots in the field, I guess is my point.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of it is. And the, and it's not just the robotic side of it, but the virtual reality training side of it. It's a safer environment where, when you're teaching someone how to work a scissor lift or a high reach or something like that, it's usually a one-on-one, an instructor along with the student in the basket working the controls. You can give them all the classroom theory that's out there, but you have to get your hands on the equipment. And there's not enough instructors to go around for the number of people that need to be trained to do it one-on-one. So if you can put somebody in a virtual piece of equipment where they're not going to hit anything, they're not going to cause damage to anything, there's very little maintenance costs. You don't have to purchase fuel. You don't have to have a giant yard that you can have 20 people lined up in these things. You could do it in a classroom, and they get all the feeling of being on the job site and using that piece of equipment, operating that piece of equipment. And if they mess up, they're not hurting themselves, they're not hurting, damaging any property or anything. It's a great scenario to be able to put people in that. You have them go through, like an asynchronous learning process where they're going through the lessons, they're learning from the very basics how to operate everything. And you can have one instructor work with 20 or 30 students at a time, depending on how many of the machines you have. Mm-hmm. And the instructor can go around and help them as they're going. but it's primarily a self-paced learning method. And I actually, I took my son and put my son on the equipment after hours just to see what he thought of it. And at the time he was 14 when we first or 13 when we first started doing it. And in a couple of hours he could operate it not as good as someone on the job, but competently enough that it was really amazing to me that somebody with absolutely no construction experience could get on that and in a couple hours be at a point where I wouldn't turn him loose on a high reach or a scissor lift, but he had enough skill that with some actual instructor-led coursework and practice, could be a competent lift driver. It's pretty amazing how far that technology has come.
I think that also sort of touches on what you were talking about before, the labor gap, and I think we didn't specifically talk about it today necessarily, but we just have to start implementing in the industry, and not just construction either. I mean, across the board where there are labor gaps, different ways of outreach. And if you find someone who has an aptitude, someone like you just mentioned, your son, who maybe plays video games in his time off of school or what have you, and maybe could be someone who would have an aptitude for that type of work. Is there something that we need to be doing as an industry, at least from your point or from IUPAT's standpoint of helping that one of those pain points you'd mentioned about the labor gap?
Yeah, it's a hard problem to solve, but I think the biggest thing that we can do is stop stigmatizing the trades as a bad pathway. I saw it in my own life. My dad always said, "Son, you're too smart to be a painter. What are you doing? You're too smart to be a painter." He didn't realize, all the different types of knowledge and it's not your IQ or whatever determines whether you're going to be successful or not. But just that stigma of, "Son, you're too smart to be a painter. You should do something more important with your life or more valuable with your life or something where you can use your gifts." That's the wrong message. Mm-hmm. And even tradespeople send that message. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the job site having sitting at lunch, sitting on a bucket, talking to my coworkers and having them say, "Yeah, I don't want my kids doing this stuff. I can't wait. My kids are going to college. I want my son, daughter, be a painter." I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, and it breaks my heart and it irritates me at the same time, because what we do is important. It takes skill to do it. It takes knowledge to do it. It's a true profession. It's a true, skilled craft that not everybody can do. And I think we scare away the people that do have aptitude for skilled trades by telling them that they have to go to college, mm-hmm. by telling that's the only path to be successful and do well in your life. The reality of it is, if you go through a trade school, you can come out with a college degree. We have programs all over the country that are providing degree and credits towards a degree by going through apprenticeship. But you come out with no debt, at least not any student loan debt like you would if you went to college. You come out having made a couple $100,000 over the course of your apprenticeship, where when you're in college you don't necessarily have that opportunity to make that kind of money. You come out with a skilled trade that no one can ever take that away from you. You can't, if things ever get bad doing anything else, if you become a glazer or an industrial applicator or an electrician or anything, you become a tradesperson and you decide to move on at some point to something else. You can always come back to the trades. Your body will remember how to do that. The skills and knowledge will still be there. You can take a couple classes, get back up to speed, and go right back to it like you never left. So the most important thing I think we could do to answer your question, now that I've gone, roundabout, most important thing I think we can do is stop talking bad about the trades. Teach people that it is a phenomenal career path where you can make a lot of money, do really well for yourself, have a really good quality of life, learn a lot along the way, have some fun while you're doing it. And I'll give you one quick story. We there's a documentary called Bridge Brothers it was a pilot for a television show that focused on bridge painters in the Philadelphia area and what it was like. It's kind of like those shows you see on the Discovery Channel or the History Channel. Mm-hmm. And it never picked up, but a lot of our folks were in that in that initial pilot. So when they did a launch party, and we all go to dinner after they did the launch, and watch the movie, and I'm sitting at the table with a bunch of just regular construction guys, just like I was from the trade, just a bridge painter, that wakes up in the morning, goes and does their job every day, painting, blasting, whatever. Goes home and barbecues, relaxes, hangs out with the family, does that. They're all talking about the trucks that they have, the nice cars that they drive, their boats, their lake houses, their ski-doos. They're talking about all these things that they have as a result of being, what my dad would classify as a dumb construction worker.
Yeah.
And we got to get away from that dumb construction worker mentality and, show the trades for what they are as a phenomenal career path for people.
Absolutely. And to your point too, I mean, no career path is the end all be all. There's never going to, we should have options. I think it's, some people should go to college. Other people should absolutely consider going into a trade.
Yep. Yeah. I 100% agree. I've told my kids they'll if they want to go to college at some point, they're welcome to do that. But before they do that, number one, they need to mature a little bit. I got out of high school. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for college. I went, but I wasn't ready for it. I wish I had taken a couple of years, did my apprenticeship before I went to school. But I told my kids that they can go to college if they want to, but they're going to learn a trade first. They're going to go through an apprenticeship. They can actually get college credits for the apprenticeship, and if they want to, become something else down the road, they can. No one will ever be able to take that trade experience away from them.
Yeah, and to your point, they can fall back on that if they need to. I think that's a really great point that people probably don't consider.
Yep, absolutely.
I also think that, go ahead.
Well, and you also learn work ethics through that. You learn the value of a dollar, and those are skills that I never learned those in college. I got myself in a bunch of financial trouble when I was going to college because I was not mature enough, and I didn't understand the value of a dollar. When you work in the trade, you know what it takes to earn a dollar, and you respect it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you probably also quickly learn, things like taxes and with your, first paycheck and,
Okay.
all important things that you need to know as an adult of, when you're managing your money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was going to say that I also think that is, at least from my standpoint, there seems to be a misconception of what does it mean to be a painter. And I've never been a painter, but I've talked to, I got hundreds at this point, and I can tell you it's not just putting paint on a ship hull. It's not just slapping paint on a floor or something like that, And I think we don't really talk about that either in the sense of, you might have an aptitude, sometimes you're a chemist in the field. You might have an aptitude for that. Mixing part A and part B, you might be really interested in the surface prep part of it or the project management. There's so much more that goes into it than putting the actual paint or coating on the substrate.
Absolutely. And that was something I learned early in my career as a painter. When I first started, I knew nothing about it. I wasn't from the trades. My dad wasn't a tradesman. So I came in completely blind and had no idea. And my conception of what a painter was and what it actually was when I got on the job was two completely different things. And I learned along the way that the more you learn, the more knowledge you have, the more skills you develop through your experience. There's a completely different, very high-tech world of coatings. We talk about in the trades, a lot of people will say painter. That's what the normal person will talk about as a painter. When you're talking about being an industrial applicator, it's one step farther. You're talking about putting a coating on in, within thousandths of an inch tolerance. Like you said, you're mixing coatings. It's not just pour these two things together. There's a specific ratio that you have to use. That's affected by the humidity, by the temperature, by the intended outcome. The surface roughness, the surface profile that the paint actually grabs onto when you're painting steel. If that's off, or if the thickness of your coating is off, you could have a multi-million-dollar coating failure that could cause major corrosion and deterioration of a structure. And it takes skill to be able to understand that and do it correctly. People don't, they really have no idea what it really takes to be an industrial coatings applicator, or what, commonly people will refer to as a painter. They have no idea.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully we can help shed a little light on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would be, I think, remiss if I didn't mention also that there are other things going on in the world today, at least, the fires in California and Washington and Oregon and Colorado. There's just a whole lot going on right now that affects everyone's everyday life, but it's also affecting, the ability to get to job sites, and those are on hold. The same thing with,
Yep.
COVID is also, like you mentioned, affecting the industry as well. Um, Obviously we can't necessarily predict these types of things, but I mean, are there changes moving forward that you see coming down the line that, is there a silver lining or a positive that we could maybe end on today? I feel like there's just so much going on
Sure.
that's negative in the world. It'd be nice to end on a positive note.
Well, so here's what I always tell people. I look at every challenge as an opportunity. So, I'll use COVID since that's a real recent example. When COVID first hit, we shut down our offices in the middle of March. No one expected it. I was one of the people that said, yeah, it's going to be a virus like the flu. Some people will get sick, no big deal. Nobody had any idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened all of a sudden. It was, oh my God, we got to close the office. How are we going to conduct business? How are we going to train people? We have 30 classes on the calendar that we're going to have to cancel. How are we going to do this? And it presented an opportunity for us to pivot in the way that we teach people. And we embraced that distance learning model. We started converting a lot of our curriculum to the asynchronous model while we still have synchronous learning, typical instructor-led classes. But we're using distance learning technology. We're using Zoom. We're using WebEx. We relied heavily on our LMS system, and it's changed the way that we train people. And even going forward, we're working on our schedule for next year for the classes that I'm hoping that things open back up after the first of the year, and gets back to normal. And while I hate the word the new normal, I think the new normal for us is going to be a hybrid training approach that includes some distance learning prior to coming to class, maybe some instructor-led sessions either before or after the in-person session happens, and a shorter in-person window.
Mm-hmm.
I now have these tools that we've used, that we were forced to use, but we have these tools to use to change the way that we train and make it more convenient, more cost-effective, and I think more impactful. So no matter what challenge comes before us, I think if we look at it as an opportunity and we use it as a tool to make ourselves better, there's a great book, I believe it's called A Beautiful Constraint, and it talks about these types of things specifically where, you take the thing that constrains you, you take that challenge, or you take that thing that you have to manage around, and you use that as a tool to make your business better, yourself better, the way that you conduct yourself better, the way you accomplish things better. And I love that philosophy. We can't change the things that happen to us, and it's almost impossible to predict and prepare for them. But our response to them, that pivot, that adjustment in the way that we do things, if we use it as an opportunity to be more successful when we come out of that challenge, or we come out of that predicament, we're going to be in a heck of a lot better shape. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, that's a great outlook. I appreciate it. I think that's a really great way of looking at it, and thanks for sharing that with me and with our listeners as well. Before we hop off, was there anything else that you wanted to mention that I failed to ask you about?
I don't think so. I guess if I had to just say one thing, this might sound really hokey, but
I like hokey.
you brought up okay. So we've got the fires, we got COVID, we've got all these things. We know what's going on in the media. We've got people, or the extremes on both sides of the political issues. All this stuff is going on. If we can just remember to be kind to one another, make our little segment of the world a better place, try to raise the bar in our industry, be generous with one another, be genuine with one another, and do the right thing. I think the average average person is a lot closer to the person next to them than the media likes us to believe. And while we might have different political views here and there, I think we're a lot closer to being on the same page than people would have us be. So if we can be kind to one another, make the world a little bit better place, it's going to be better for all of us. So
I love that. That's such a great way to end it. Thank you so much for sharing everything again. Anton, thanks for joining us. How can people reach you if they'd like to follow up afterwards?
So they could go to our website if you're interested in training or FTI. You can reach us there at ifti.edu. If you're interested in learning more about the IUPAT, IUPAT.org is the union website, we're on all the typical social media platforms and everything else. But IFTI and IUPAT, either one of those will get back to us. And if anybody wants to talk about paint, I love talking about paint. And I love talking about workforce development too. So
awesome.
give me a call or look me up.
Sweet. Okay, great. Well, thanks again. I hope that I'll have a chance to stop by the Hanover location again sometime soon. I'm hoping in maybe 2021. That'd be great. So
Absolutely. We'd love to host you.
Thanks.
Have a great day, Stephanie. Thank you.
You too. Once more, that was Anton Rusing, director of the IUPAT International Finishing Trades Institute. I think he's got a really interesting kind of take on the industry, and it was great to have him on the podcast today. So do reach out to him and get information if you'd like to follow up. It's ifti.edu. As always, there's information on coatingspromag.com pertaining to this specific topic, as well as all things coatings for concrete, steel, and roof substrates. So go ahead over there and check that out. Feel free to reach back if you have any questions, comments, ideas. We'd love to feature contractors in the magazine and online. So we're always open for chatting and feedback as well. So again, I'm Stephanie Chizik. I'm the editor-in-chief of Coatings Pro Magazine. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Stay healthy. And as always, happy coating.